Mom tries to keep dog from nursery, then she watches camera back. Bree and Anthony Mendez met while they were both studying at Cornell University in Ithaca, New York. While she had an aptitude for philosophy, Anthony's passion lay in economics and business. In the span of a few years, they had gotten married, and soon, they were expecting their first child. Realizing that the busy city wasn't the best place to start a family, the couple decided to move to a safe and affordable neighborhood on the outskirts of New York City. Shortly after moving into their beautiful home, the couple adopted an adorable pit bull named Missy, and a few months later, on a warm Thursday afternoon, they welcomed their baby daughter into the world. Bree spent every second of her 12 weeks of maternity leave with the baby. It was during this time that she noticed a close bond forming between Missy and Michaela. But soon enough, she would have to return to work. She had no idea that in a matter of weeks, all peace in their new home would be disturbed. Bree and Anthony were set on finding the perfect nanny to take care of their daughter while they returned to work. When they first interviewed Kelly, she seemed like the perfect fit for their family. She showed up early each morning, taking care of Michaela while Anthony and Bree got ready for work. They were overjoyed to see how well she got along with their baby. But it was during this time that Missy began spending a lot of time in the nursery, staring at the baby. Bree didn't think much of this, but she should have. Missy's odd behavior occurred suddenly, and it didn't take long for Bree to notice the change. Since Kelly started working for the family, Missy refused to leave the baby's side. She would often be found standing next to the crib, staring at the baby for hours on end. During bath and feeding times, she stood in the doorway of the nursery, waiting for Bree and Anthony to return Michaela to her crib. Bree became concerned. Missy had never been so high-strung before. In just a few weeks, Bree would discover the horrific truth. Eventually, Bree was too scared to leave Michaela and Missy alone at night. She knew that Kelly was there to protect her baby during the day, but she feared that something would happen while they were asleep. She decided that it would be best to separate them. One night, she tried locking the dog out of the nursery, but Missy stood outside the door, whining for hours on end until she was allowed back in. It kept Bree up at night. What was happening to her beloved pet? One morning, a tired and anxious Bree gathered her things, ready to leave for work. She was about to step out of the house when she heard a strange sound. It was something she had never heard before. She looked towards Missy as she stood behind Kelly in the nursery, growling at the young woman. At this point, Missy hadn't left the nursery in weeks, determined to stay close to the baby. As soon as Kelly went to lift the baby from her crib, Missy's growls became louder. Bree frowned. While at work, Bree couldn't stop thinking about Missy's odd behavior that morning. She couldn't understand it. Missy had never acted up like this before. It wasn't like Kelly was a stranger. She had been taking care of the baby for a few weeks now. Why was she growling at the nanny, and why was she refusing to leave the nursery? She was sick with worry. When she returned home that night, she told her husband about the exchange, and he found it as strange as she did. Something had to be done about this. Scared for the safety of their daughter, the couple discussed returning Missy to the shelter. Before making any rash decisions, Anthony assured his wife that he would keep an eye on the situation. In the coming weeks, he too noticed Missy's aggression, but one day, he realized something important. Missy would only growl when Kelly was around, especially when she was interacting with the baby. He shared this information with Bree, and they agreed that something suspicious was going on. That was when they decided to install a hidden camera in the nursery. They had no idea what they were about to catch on camera. They waited until the weekend before checking the footage. It was early in the morning and Michaela was still asleep. Bree sat next to her husband as he opened the recording on his tablet. They took a deep breath before he finally clicked on the video. At first, everything seemed normal. It was right after they had left the house and Kelly was feeding the baby. Just a few minutes after they had left, she placed Michaela back in her crib and made her way to the couch in the nursery. She took a seat and immediately started scrolling on her phone. Michaela had started crying. Bree expected to see Kelly rush to the crib and comfort the crying baby, but instead, she continued scrolling on her phone. When the crying got louder, Bree watched in disbelief as Kelly started yelling for the baby to keep quiet. At this point, Michaela was screaming at the top of her lungs. This set Kelly off as she got up from the couch and rushed over to the crib, yelling at the baby instead of comforting her. Anthony and Bree watched with wide eyes as the dog jumped up, barking and growling at Kelly as she kept screaming at the baby. Bree's heart ached as she watched the footage. Her baby needed comfort, but instead, the nanny was screaming and using vulgar language. Anthony paused the video and turned to comfort his emotional wife as tears welled up in her eyes. All along, Missy had been trying to protect their baby. She wasn't leaving her side, scared that Kelly would harm the baby. The two concerned parents knew what they had to do. They couldn't let Kelly get away with this. All this time, they had trusted her to look after their baby while they were away at work. She couldn't be trusted. When Monday morning came around, they sat Kelly down and gave her a piece of their mind. Anthony told her about the recordings and watched as the color drained from her face. They asked her to leave their home and never return again. No one was allowed to treat their daughter that way. Just days after Kelly was fired, Missy was back to her calm, friendly self. When the dust settled, Bree and Anthony decided to try once again. After weeks of searching, they found a woman named Betty. Betty was a retired pediatric nurse, and since the first time they had spoken to her, they knew that she was the perfect match for their daughter. To make things even better, Missy loved Betty. They hired her soon after, and after years of taking care of Michaela, Betty became part of the family. Together, the three of them made sure that no one would ever harm their sweet girl again.